And on Good Morning Nigeria today, we shall continue our focus on the ongoing African Union Summit, as well as Nigeria and ECOWAS.
Well, the 29th African Union Summit is no doubt drawing attention to the vision of the African Union of an integrated, prosperous and peaceful Africa, driven by its own citizens and as well representing a dynamic force in global arena. And
from its earlier progenitor of the Organization of African Unity in 1963, which then focused on the liberation of all other countries or territories that were still under colonial administration, right up to the creation of the AU, key issues that have occupied the attention of the new African Union have always had to do with how to make Africa more on a forward march.
You're quite right, Kingsley. Questions are continuing to arise over how much mileage the African Union has covered in our mission of becoming an efficient as well as a value-added institution, driving the African integration as well as development process in close collaborations with African Union member states and other regional economic communities and continents.
All right. Now, in pursuit of the vision of a new forward-looking and dynamic as well as integrated Africa, the AU, it seems, is ready to invest in the youth, who constitute some 70% of its human capital resource. Hence, the theme of the summit, which is taking place this year, and the summit, of course, is entitled Harnessing Demographic Dividend Through Investment in Youth.
Well, on the other hand, the Economic Community of West African States, ECOWAS, has been meeting on the sidelines of the AU summit with a view to re-strategizing to achieve her short, medium and long-term goals.
Now, but what role will Nigeria continue to play in the affairs of the regional body, that's to say the Economic Community of West African States, taking into account Nigeria's huge financial commitment that has remained quite an issue of interest to Nigerians?
Another fear is further heightened by the role of the Francophone member nations in pushing through the membership of Morocco, or the indicated membership of Morocco, a non-West African nation, into the membership of ECOWAS.
Now, the Moroccan agenda, according to some observers, has been long-standing, and is now what's referred to as the use of fertilizer diplomacy with Nigeria and other bilateral agreements with a number of Francophone countries in the West African sub-region to appear to water any possible or dilute any possible resistance to its application to join ECOWAS. Now, the seriousness of this development has led the former Minister of Foreign Affairs or External Affairs, as it was called then, that's Professor Bolaji Akiyemi, and others, in imploring the Nigerian government to resist the move by Morocco to join formally the Economic Community of West African States. Now, what are the implications of a possible membership of Morocco of ECOWAS, and what should be the priority of ECOWAS at this time of the sub-regional development? ECOWAS, of course, is 42 years old, having been formed in 1975. Now, these and other questions will dominate our conversation segments on the program this morning, which is, as always, Good Morning Nigeria, reaching you live on the network service of the Nigerian Television Authority. My name is Kingsley Osadolo, and I welcome you to today's edition of the program.
My name is Blessing Abu. I join Kingsley in welcoming you to today's edition. We hope you stay from now to the end of the program to look at issues with us. Well, alongside the discussion, we'll be having our complementary segments, which will include newspaper review, business, sports, foreign, as well as entertainment news. But right now, it's time for the morning news with Laurie Bala Hassan. Good morning to you, Laurie.
Good morning, Blessing. Good morning, Kingsley. Good morning, Nigeria, and a warm welcome to the news. Acting President Yemi Osinbajo joined other heads of state and government in Addis Ababa for the 29th Assembly of the African Union. The focus of the meeting is on harnessing the benefits in the increasing population of youths for a greater African continent.
Basically, for us, we're doing quite a bit, and we think that there is a lot that we can give in terms of our experience. We hired about 200,000 young graduates. We did, as you know, it's called Empower, an online portal, and we're also training online. I think it's probably the largest number of people being trained, largest number of teachers, farm workers, public health officials being trained, at once. So for us, I think, this is innovative. I think it's groundbreaking, and sharing it with the other member nations, I'm sure that it will be an eye-opener for many, and it may well be the way to go for some as well.
President Muhammadu Buhari has sent a personal letter of condolence to the governor of Kano State, Abdullahi Umar Ganduje, in which he expressed profound shock over the death of the elder statesman, Dr. Yusuf Maitama Sule. The letter, personally signed by the president, described the death of Alhaji Sule as a heavy loss. Likewise, Acting President Yemi Osinbajo has expressed deep sorrow over the passing away of Alhaji Maitama Sule. Acting President, through his Twitter handle, described the deceased as an orator, elder statesman and diplomat, prayed the Almighty God to grant him eternal rest. Senate President Bukola Saraki has described the death of elder statesman, the Ammasan in Kano, Alhaji Yusuf Maitama Sule, as a loss of a great nationalist. Saraki, in a statement by his special advisor, Media and Publicity, Yusuf Olaniyonu, described late Maitama Sule as a detribalized Nigerian who spoke truth to power at all times during his lifetime. In a like manner, Speaker, House of Representatives Yakubu Dogara has described the death of Maitama Sule as a great loss to Africa. In a statement by his special advisor on media, Turaki Hassan, the Speaker described the late Maitama Sule as a patriot and icon of peace who was committed to the peace and unity of Nigeria even at old age. As a result of unrelenting operations of the Nigerian Armed Forces, more than 700 suspected Boko Haram members have surrendered. The Chief of Army Staff, Lieutenant General Tukur Buratai, announced this at a photo art exhibition organized by the Nigerian Army to mark the 2017 Army Day celebration.
I received the good news that about 700 Boko Haram terrorists within the fringes of the Sambisa forest have surrendered.
The menace of congestion at the various ports and customs warehouses nationwide as a result of seized and uncleared cargoes remains a major concern to the federal government. It is in a bid to eliminate congestion that the Nigerian Customs Service introduced a faster and more transparent process of disposing of such items through auction hitherto fraught with irregularities.
The whole process was only open to those who have access to members of the Nigerian Customs Service. The process was also open to only those who had something to do with auction, in the sense that today we are being threatened with court action by some concerned Nigerians that felt what we're doing would exclude them from what they are used to benefiting from. And I believe that was the idea why we came up with this.
Power sector reform and the missing link formed the central focus of discourse at the second quarter fellowship conferment of the Nigerian Society of Engineers. This is with a view to identifying the pertinent issues that have stalled the growth and development of the sector, despite efforts made by successive governments to bring efficiency and effectiveness into electricity business in Nigeria.
Highest output ever recorded, to the best of my knowledge, was 5,517 megawatts, and this was about in February 2015. The transmission network is weak and fragile, according to old age and poor maintenance.
If Nigeria is to survive in the next 2 years, she has no choice than to pay more attention to knowledge, especially in the area of science and technology. Executive Secretary, National Universities Commission, Professor Abubakar Rashid, stated this while giving approval to Moshood Abiola University of Science and Technology in Ogun State.
Of access alone, we are concerned about the integrity, the sanctity of the degree Nigerian universities award.
And some former ministers under the platform of the People's Democratic Party, PDP, have joined other well-meaning Nigerians to wish President Muhammadu Buhari speedy recovery. The ex-minister said the president is an embodiment of positive change, which the mantra of the APC-led government portrays. This came at the end of the forum's emergency meeting held in Abuja.
The forum also calls for urgent meeting of all organs of the party to harmonize all necessary strategy to consolidate the party and unite all efforts in the forthcoming challenges, and particularly the build-up to the 2019 general election.
Ensuring effective policing of the nation's maritime domain is receiving the needed attention by key players in the sector. This came to the fore during a meeting between the Chief of Naval Staff, Vice Admiral Ibokete Ibas, and Managing Director, Nigerian Ports Authority in Abuja to address contentious issues in their areas of operations.
Task force were able to bring down the incidences of piracy and sea robbery to the barest minimum. But then there are some other stakeholders out there that require that we give special protection to their consignments. And so here we have provided ships that will escort such ships beyond the areas that the task group is concentrating its security and patrols.
And that's the news for now. Kingsley and Blessing will be back after this break. Good morning.
If you hear a bomb explosion or gunshots of an active shooter, that might be a terror attack. At such times, always remember 3 action words: run, hide, report. Don't try to run towards the terror scene to save the situation, because there might be a second bomb blast or another attack. Run far away and take cover. Make sure you are safe first. Yes, it is in our nature to sympathize over the hurt, but remember, only trained personnel can help in such situations. When in a secured environment, promptly call relevant authorities and help will come. For anonymous reporting, call 09630-3250-5 or 0813-2222-106. If you see something, say something. Nigeria unite against terrorism. This message is brought to you by the Federal Ministry of Information and Culture.
Slow, madam. Arikuwa. Agagwan! Ovio! Good, carry on. Sit up. Akbar, now waiting be this. Hey, smart gun over here, don't fit again. Everybody want make I put them on top. You remember I just smart connect when I charge 100 naira, then go give me 800 naira. You know my bureau. Now every end of the month, then go give me back all my recharge. Why don't recharge? As that bonus. From this one, no, we just jar out. That now over Jara back to sender. Over Jara back to sender. Mama BC.
Buy an Airtel SIM and get back all your recharges as data bonus by month end on Smart Connect.
Hey! Alele.
Airtel, the smartphone network.
You're watching Good Morning Nigeria. For the business report this morning, the federal government is set to ready to deploy technology to enhance tax compliance. Let's find out more details with Joy Uzo.
Hello and and welcome to Business News. The federal government will deploy and heavily rely on technology to increase tax compliance under the recently launched Voluntary Assets and Income Declaration Scheme, VAIS. Minister of Finance, Mrs. Kemi Adeosun, who stated this in Abuja, explained that the signing of an executive order by the acting president, Professor Yemi Osinbajo, on assets declaration underlines the seriousness attached to the scheme, which would be vigorously implemented. A statement signed by the Director of Information, Federal Ministry of Finance, Salisu Danbata, indicates that at 6% to GDP, Nigeria's tax compliance rate was low, while most developed nations were at the range of 30 to 32%. As part of strategies deployed, the Finance Minister revealed that government had deployed data mining to compile data on thousands of taxpayers, which showed the level of non-compliance and tax evasion. She added that the scheme is also to help increase tax awareness and education as the community tax liaison officers, who are graduates recruited through the N-Power program, would go into their communities, schools and other public places to raise awareness and help increase tax enrollment. The minister gave assurance of the judicious use of funds, saying that tax payment is part of the civic partnership between people and government, which would enhance participation and accountability. The Manufacturing Purchasing Managers Index, PMI, increased to 52.9 index points in June 2017, showing expansion in the manufacturing sector for the third consecutive month. The Central Bank of Nigeria, CBN, reviews this in its PMI report for June 2017. This week, the PMI is an indicator of the economic health of the manufacturing sector and is based on 5 major indicators: new orders, inventory levels, production, supplier deliveries, and the employment environment. A composite PMI above 50 points indicates that the manufacturing and non-manufacturing economy is generally expanding. The current economic recession in the country has increased the volume of fraud cases in the banking industry, with the attendant loss of money. Latest figures obtained from the Central Bank of Nigeria, CBN's website, indicate that the banking sector recorded 31,736 fraud cases involving the sum of 16.5 billion naira between January 2014 and December 2016. The fraud statistics are contained in the Nigerian Electronic Fraud Report, which was prepared by the Banking and Systems Payments Department of the CBN. The frauds were perpetrated through various payment channels in the banking sector. The report stated that in the last 3 years, there had been more attempts in the number of fraud cases, adding that the development might be linked to the economic hardship being experienced in the country as part of efforts to check the menace. Financial analysts called on the CBN and the Nigerian Deposit Insurance Corporation to stir up regulatory oversight, advising that sensitive positions in banks should not be given to those who are not members of relevant professional bodies. Finally, equities market closed Monday on a negative note as the NSE All-Share Index depreciated by 1.05% to close at 32,769.80 basis points. Now a quick check at other closing figures on the floor of the exchange. That's it on Business News. I am Joy Uzo.
Thank you very much, Joy Uzo. Up next on Good Morning Nigeria is the newspaper review.
All right, Bayo Atoyobe, our newspaper reviewer, is right here with us in the studios for today's edition of the review of the headlines on the front pages of some of today's newspapers. Bayo, pleasure to have you with us.
Thank you, Kingsley. Good morning. Good morning, Blessing.
Good morning, Bayo.
And good morning, Nigeria.
All right, so as should be expected, we have a prominent obituary story on the front pages of the papers we have this morning, along, of course, with stories emanating from the ongoing operations in the Northeast. Let's begin with the New Telegraph. The New Telegraph has as its lead story, Boko Haram commanders and top fighters surrender. And has two riders. Burete, that's Chief of Army Staff, 700 terrorists give up in Sambisa Forest, and troops raid factory and recover cache of arms in Delta. Details of the story can be found on page 2. Now, just below that, you have two photographs, actually, on the front page, two substantive photographs on the front page of the New Telegraph. Maritime dies in Cairo, and it has two riders, Buhari Oshibajo, Jonathan Saraki Dogara, Kalu, ACF Ohaneze, and governors mourn. And of course, there's a special report there that says passage of a statesman. Details of the story can be found on pages 10 and 11. Now, beside that photograph, as well as headline and riders, there's another photograph showing former President Shehu Shagari, former head of state General Yakubu Gowon, and the Catholic Archbishop of Sokoto Diocese, Matthew Hassan Kuka, during a visit to Shagari in Sokoto yesterday. Of course, Bayo, of course, will be discussing Maritime Sule. Maritime Sule lost out in the primaries, presidential primaries of the then MPN to Shehu Shagari, and Shehu Shagari became president in 1979. Below that, another story, 100 million naira bribery allegation rocks Kano Assembly, and money meant to scuttle Emir's probe, and Speaker resigns. Details of that can be found on page 34. And below that is strip headline, age affects men's chances of bearing children. That's on page 6. Now let's go very quickly to the headlines below the nameplate of New Telegraph. Just headlines below the nameplate. Court finds Jonathan's wife and dismisses suit against EFCC. And ritual killer escapes lynching in Lagos. Restructuring, Masob berates Ohaneze and Southeast leaders. That's on page 32. And on page 8, teachers defile and infect 20 female students with STDs. Blessing.
All right, quickly now to the blueprint. I'll start off with the blueprint. As is expected, most of the papers I have to have the photograph of Nigeria's first UN permanent representative, Maitama Sule's death. While the other writers to it, Buhari writes Ganduje, he was a national asset. This is coming from acting president Yemi Osinbajo. Nigeria has lost iconic politician, coming from APC and PDP. Kano declares work-free day. Burial for 4:30 p.m. today. More tributes you find on pages 7, 8, and 9. Now to other story, just above the, below the photograph rather, INEC releases timetable on Melaye's recall. Melaye is Senator Dino Melaye representing Kogi West. 700 Boko Haram members surrender in Borno. That story you find on page 16. And just beside that, you have the story, Kano Assembly Speaker resigns over graft. Page 14 will let you into that story. Plateau recalls 2,017 disengaged workers. Another story, erosion claims 7 in Nasarawa State. Emir suspends 7 district heads over Durbar. You find the story on page 17. Quickly to the independent paper. The photograph of the late Maitama Sule there is done in that front page there. And you have the headline, Buhari Osinbajo, Jonathan Saraki Dogara. Others mourn Maitama Sule. With the rider, Kano declares today work-free day. Okay, Bayo, let's have you come in here first.
Work-free day, the people in Kano will today pay their last respects to Yusuf Maitama Sule. He promised he will not be popular with poetic peace. That was Maitama Sule. He was renowned for his saying, God give us leaders with fear of God, with a mind to serve the people. He also says, God give us leaders who will admit what they have done in secret and also in public. Yusuf Maitama Sule was a former Minister of Mines and Power in the First Republic. He also served as the Commissioner for Local Government in the era of Governor Audu Bako in the military regime in Kano State. Later on, he became Nigeria's permanent representative at the United Nations, heading the initiatives for apartheid after he lost out in the contest with President Shagari for the leadership of the flag of the then MPN. He also became former chairman, Public Complaints Commission, before the end of the Second Republic. He was born in 1929 in Ugwarogo in Kano. His oratory powers is said to be something he inherited from his mother. His mother used to be invited to public ceremonies where her prowess in public speaking was very amusing to all people. Unfortunately, the woman died when Maitama was 4. From there, Maitama grew and attended elementary school in 1937, middle school in 1939, and he attended the famous Kaduna College, where Bariwa College and Kefi College took their roots between 1943 and 1949. He entered politics in 1954, and guess what? The first candidate he defeated was Madam Aminu Kano, his teacher. And that one challenged you. I hope you will be a good representative and not disgrace us. And throughout his career, everybody has attested that he served without blemish. Condolences have been coming in. President Muhammadu Buhari signed a condolence letter that will be delivered at the burial today by a delegation that will be selected by the acting president. He said, though I knew he was in poor health for some time now, his death nonetheless came to me as a profound shock. He assisted in our founding fathers, Dr. Nnamdi Azikiwe, Abadu Bello, Abubakar Tafawa Balewa, and Obafemi Awolowo, in laying the ground of national coexistence. He served with distinction in the First Republic, Second Military Regime, and the Second Republic without blemish. Other tributes too are coming for acting president, Professor Yemi Osinbajo. He says he received the news with profound sorrow. In his lifetime, he positioned himself as an agent of unity, and the acting president recalled that he will be remembered as a foremost envoy whose will and vision contributed to the high esteem and respect that Nigeria earned at the UN. His fatherly counsel was one of a bold authority, sincere and unblemished. In fact, incidentally, he visited the acting president on 25th of August, I think last year. Other tributes have come to former 7 heads of the National Assembly and former governors, as well as the current 7 one. Former President Goodluck Jonathan says he was a bridge builder.
All right, Bayo, thank you very much indeed. As we said, that story is to be found on the front pages of the papers that we have this morning, and this day captures this with just the bottom half of the front page of this day newspapers. The headline is, with a kicker, Maitama Sule, an eloquent unifier, dies in heat of national strife. And of course, with a rider on the persons who have, on the dignitaries who have paid tribute to him. But the lead story of this day newspaper is as follows, with a headline, Book on Memelari reopens wounds from first coup. And the writer there says, Gawan, Obasanjo, Buhari, IBB, Abdusalami, and others reflect. Now, above the nameplate of this day newspaper, 2 other headlines. One, of course, is on Etisalat. That's the ongoing issues in terms of debt repayment. Etisalat CEO, CFO resign as crisis deepens. CFO stands for Chief Financial Officer. And NCC and CBN in crucial meeting with Telco and banks and commissions board to meet today. So Etisalat CEO and CFO resign as crisis deepens. And below that, we have a story of some Nigerian banks that are said to be amongst 1,000 global banks. Details of that on page 31. Bless you.
Okay, let me get back to the Independent paper. Leading for the Independent this morning, we have employment, manufacturing, growth, boost economic recovery. With a rider, federal government targets $1 billion from voluntary income declaration. Still on front page, other stories. PDP crisis, Supreme Court to deliver judgments come July 12. OPC expels Frederick Fashion, Gani Adams. All the details you'll find on page 6. And the story about the Kano Assembly Speaker resigning over probe of MS Sanusi is right on the left side corner of the page. That's on front page, rather. Assembly raises committee to investigate him. It's impossible to restructure Nigeria, says IPOB. And the details you find on page 9.
All right, just before Bayo comes in, Bayo, let's take other headlines from the Daily Sun newspaper. Daily Sun, an earpiece beside the nameplate of Daily Sun newspaper is as follows. Let's scrap Senate or House of Reps. And this is according to Amakura. Amakura, of course, is governor of Nasarawa State. Let's scrap Senate or House of Reps. That's on page 6 in greater detail. The lead story, of course, we've read from other newspapers. And then you have the photograph there on the front page with the acting president is cycled there in the photograph showing he, along with other African leaders at the ongoing 29th African Union Summit that's taking place in Addis Ababa. Now, of course, also there on the front page, you have Buhari, Jonathan, and Governors Kalu, others mourn as Maritime Sule is buried today. INEC releases timetable for Melaye's recall. Blessing already read that, but in greater detail, you can find that story also on page 37 of Daily Sun. And the story, of course, on the resignation of the Kano Speaker, Kano Assembly Speaker, is there as well on page 37. And CBN, NCC, and 13 banks make Etisalat board. This on page 2. We already read that story as well from the front page of this day newspaper.
Yes, Kingsley, the call to scrap either the Senate or the House of Rep has been raging for long, and it is based on the contention that having those two legislatures are very expensive for Nigeria. But the question is, who will bail the cat? That will go to amending the Constitution, and to initiate that must go through both chambers of the current National Assembly. So it's a political, not very difficult to crack. Meanwhile, going back to Kano, Alhaji Kabiru Rurum has resigned as Speaker of Kano State House of Assembly, and he says he resigned to protect his integrity because there were allegations by members of corruption, and the allegations were that he had received about 100 million naira from a prominent Kano businessman, but he refused to share it among members. A new speaker has been appointed, and the allegation is subject to investigation. Meanwhile, there has been tremendous success. 700 Boko Haram members have surrendered. They were said to be operating around the fringes of Sambisa. And you will recall that for all the infiltrations and suicide bombing that have been happening at the University of Maiduguri have been coming along that road to Sambisa Forest, which is about 45 kilometers away from the University of Maiduguri. That is a tremendous success, and we hope that those that have surrendered will give strong information and intelligence that will need the incessant suicide bombing in the bud.
Blessing, just before you sign off bio, just one story, of course, we don't have on the front pages of the papers today. You can find it inside some of the papers, is that the acting president, Yemi Osinbajo, has signed the Diaspora Commission Bill. According to the Senior Special Assistant on National Assembly Liaison, the bill was signed into law last Friday. Blessing.
Well, no more stories to look into. I think, bio, that'll be it for this morning. We'll see you tomorrow.
Thank you.
This is Good Morning Nigeria. We'll take a break, and when we return, we'll start off with a conversation with a look on what is happening at the ongoing African Union Summit, as well as issues with Nigeria and ECOWAS. We'll be right back after the break.
The Future Assured project of the wife of the president, Aisha Muhammad Buhari, is carrying out free medical screening and distribution of food items at various IDP camps while ensuring the economic empowerment of women through training and skill acquisition. In recognition of her efforts, wives of governors have lent their voices and support.
In Kogi State, we feel the impact of Future Assured, especially in women and children.
The Future Assured program of Mrs. Aisha Muhammad Buhari, the wife of the president, has been very assuring and still reassuring in Sokoto State. It has impacted positively in the areas of humanity, especially women and children.
Supports the Future Assured initiative. Email programs@futureassured.org.ng. Future Assured, promoting and protecting the lives of Nigerian women and children.
You're watching Good Morning Nigeria. To set the tone for our conversation on African Union Summit, as well as Nigerian and ECOWAS, correspondent Oyeyemi Ajayi has his background report.
The ongoing 29th African Union Summit in Addis Ababa, Ethiopia, has the full attendance of member countries, as it concerns virtually about 70% of the total workforce of the continent's population, which is the youth. This informs this year's theme, harnessing demographic dividends through investments in the youth. Major issues on the front burner of discourse include youth empowerment, AU institutional reform, peace and security, AU funding, election of 2 remaining commissioners, Agenda 2063, as well as a 10-year implementation plan and continental trade area. The Foreign Affairs Ministers discussed the plight of refugees and displaced persons, strengthening disease prevention and other health issues on the continent, tackling terrorism on the continent, among others. They agreed that there is a need to carry the youth along and harness their roles in the development of the continent. However, on the sideline of the summit was the meeting of the Council of Foreign Affairs Minister of ECOWAS, where issues concerning the regional organization was deliberated upon. Also, modalities for the reform of the Commission, sharing formula for positions at the ECOWAS Commission, particularly commissioners, which will be reduced from 15 to 9. Funding of the institution was another issue brought to the fore, especially now that Nigeria, which used to be the huge contributor to the organization, is facing some challenges with our economy. Despite the huge contribution to the organization, Nigeria is not given any major or influential role in the organization. One major issue that continues to be of concern is the intention of Morocco to join ECOWAS. Of what purpose and importance is ECOWAS to Morocco despite the geographical disparity? And with more francophone countries, some analysts say it could be easy for Morocco to be absorbed, knowing fully well the deep fraternity which exists among the francophone.
All right, thank you very much there, correspondent Oyeyemi Ajayi, for that background report. We are having with us guests in the studios here in Abuja, as well as from our Lagos network studios, to discuss the issues that have been indicated, namely the ongoing summit in Addis, as well as Nigeria and ECOWAS. First, we'd like to welcome familiar face, of course, on Good Morning Nigeria, his former Permanent Secretary, Minister of Foreign Affairs, Ambassador Joe Keshi. Ambassador Keshi, I'd like to have you join us again. Good morning. Okay. And also here with us in the studios is the former Ambassador of Nigeria to Libya, is Ambassador Mohammed K. Ibrahim. Ambassador Ibrahim, I'd like to have you join us on the program today.
Thank you.
Okay. All right. And Blessing from Lagos Network Studios, we have 2 other guests.
Yes, we'll be joined at this time in the Lagos studio, Professor Bola Akinteriwa, the former Director General with the Nigerian Institute of International Affairs. Professor Akinteriwa, it's our pleasure to have you on the program this morning.
Having me.
Also with Professor Akinteriwa in Lagos is Ambassador Olusoye Akinsoye. Is a former envoy to Ethiopia as well, and was a former ambassador to the African Union as well. We'd like to welcome Ambassador Akinsoye to the program this morning.
Very much blessing. Thanks for having me.
All right, Kingsley.
All right. We also have our correspondent who is in Addis Ababa, Makut Simon Macham. Of course, you can see him there on the screen. He's joining us via Skype from Addis Ababa. Makut Simon Macham, how are you? Welcome to Good Morning Nigeria.
Good morning.
All right, I didn't quite hear your response, but I saw your lips moving, so I could read your lips, and then, of course, know that you are live with us. Let's begin this conversation with you. Give us a situation report of the ongoing transactions at the 29th summit of the African Union, which you have, of course, been covering.
As you are aware, the heads of states met yesterday, and the 29th session officially opened, where they discussed the theme of this summit, which is harnessing the demographic dividend through investments in the youth. From the opening statements of the AU chairman, President Alpha Conde of Guinea, to so many other speakers that addressed the summit, it was clear that Africa has come to realization that without investing in the youth, the development of the continent would not be as speedy or as effective as it's envisaged. And so they talked about the role that the youth can play. And indeed, the president of Chad presented a report of the youth summit that was held in Jamena, preparing the report that they were deliberating on. And in parts of that report, it was clear that the youth want to be involved in perhaps planning some of the development area issues. They want jobs. They want entrepreneurship opportunities, and they want to play a key role in the economic development. Don't forget that in this information age, the youth are in the forefront. And so it was clear that Africa will need to invest so much in the youth and make sure that the youth really buy into all the programs that will propel development. Remember that the chunk of the population in Africa comprises of youth. So that was clear. And when the acting president spoke yesterday, and indeed he spoke to journalists after the meeting yesterday, he made it clear that Nigeria, for instance, is working very hard to ensure that in its programs, that is like the Empower, the social investments programs, the youth are effectively captured so as to ensure that they play a key part in development. Apart from that, there was the issue of also the consideration of the report on African peace and the implementation of silent program for silencing guns by 2020. It was part of the efforts of the peace and security architecture of the continent. That was also discussed. And indeed, there is also the issue of the reforming the African Union. And it's a critical issue that had to do a lot with the funding and indeed the structure and how AU can really stand as a strong body. Remember yesterday at the opening, President Robert Mugabe of Zimbabwe presented a check which he had pledged to present 300 cows, I think. He promised that in South Africa, and he fulfilled the pledge yesterday. And during his presentation, he said that Africa and indeed the AU must be independent, must not be relying on other donor agencies or bodies to fund it. That way, it can plan on its own and it can really do what it wants to do. And so there's a proposal of some tariff, 0.2%, I think, of imports, taxable imports that they are proposing. So those are some of the discussions that are ongoing. By the end of the meeting, their meeting today, we'll be able to know what they have arrived on.
Okay, Marcus, still looking at the theme, looking at young persons, at least with about 70% of African population dominated by the young persons that we are looking at. What other kind of strategies are member nations looking towards using to actually harness this group?
Okay, from the presentations, it was clear that job creation is a major factor because some of the crises on the continent can be linked to unemployment, can be linked to other things. For instance, the issue of terrorism, which is also on the front burner here, is linked to the fact that some of the youths that are lured towards some of these activities are not engaged. And so that the economy of the African continent needs to capture these youths and indeed provide them the platforms to work. And then the issue of science and technology, that there should be that process where they can utilize their knowledge, they can put their skills to use. Remember the most of the leading lights in science and technology around the world are youth. And so these people have skills, they have zeal, they have energy, and those energies are what I understand from what speakers were saying yesterday, that needs to be properly channeled. And apart from that, the issue of mentorship and, of course, expression. The youths, as it appears right now, can hardly be silenced, but they can be involved and engaged properly so that they can see development from the perspective, of course, that the leaders are seeing, so that development will be holistic, not that the youths are going one way and those in power are going the other way. So there is a consensus, so to say, that there should be an engagement with the youth, be it in planning, in implementation, in other things, that youth should be mentored to believe in their countries, believe in themselves, and then believe in the continent. That way, the leaders believe that the continent will move faster.
All right, I was just wondering, Makut, just before we bring in our guests, could you give us an indication of the level of attendance at the summit? Are all African heads of state present, or some are missing?
Not all the heads of state are represented. Some are not. Like South Africa, some other countries, I cannot get the whole list now, but quite a number are represented by either vice presidents, like Cameroon, I saw the vice president, and then some at ministerial level. So not all the heads of state are attending this meeting.
All right, Makut Simon, thank you very much. Of course, we'll still retain you while we bring in our guests now to begin to discuss these issues. Perhaps, we should, start off with our guests in Lagos, Ambassador Akinsoya, of course, who represented Nigeria at the AU, that's in Addis Ababa. Ambassador Akinsoya, you listened to our correspondent there give an overview of what's happening at the current summit. What are your thoughts, particularly with regard to the theme? Is Africa waking up rather late to the realization of what it needs to do with its young population?
Well, thank you. I think the report was quite succinct, and I must say that in the usual tradition of the African Union meetings, themes, discussions, particularly at the summit level, center around the theme of the meeting. I think the issue of harnessing the youth empowerment is very necessary, particularly at this time that there have been quite a lot of intergenerational dialogue within the African Union around Agenda 2063, and that people are saying that you are leaders are planning, but are you going to be there by the year 2063 when most of these things will come to fruition? But so we need to be part of the discussions. We need to be part of the operationalization, and I think this is it's a follow-up. I recall that I participated at the Malabo meeting and youth empowerment also. It has been on the front burner in the African Union because we now have what has been regarded as the youth's bulge. The youth's bulge. And it's important that we engage the youths as a vehicle for development and also for peace and security to ensure stability of our countries, and particularly with the insurgency and terrorist attacks, that where there is unemployment, where there are massive poverty, the youths or the unemployed youths are used by actors, in terms of perpetrating terrorism. So I think the theme was quite important, and the theme is very apt, and it enables the leaders to think ahead of what they will do in terms of providing environment, engaging the youths, as part of the general inclusiveness of governance. I think the EU is on the right track in addressing, in stressing on that theme.
All right, Ambassador Akinsoya, thank you very much. Just beside you there, of course, is Professor Bola Akinterewa. Professor Akinterewa, let's have your thoughts on this same issue.
You see, the thing may be important, but I think it's not the critical issue we should be addressing. Ambassador Akinsoya rightly pointed out, they've been talking about youth empowerment, youth bulge. The main problem is that the African leaders are good at talking, but they don't do anything to ensure that the pursuit of their agenda, all right, is brought to realization. One critical problem here is that if, for instance, we want to argue that African leaders are now serious about investing in the future of the youth, that the youth are actually indispensable to the future of regional integration, economic development, economic growth. Now, to what extent are the African leaders ready to pay their assessed dues? Are they paying? What is the percentage of European, Euro-American support for African progress? How much are the African leaders in terms of percentage? Please, we all know. For as long as non-African states will be responsible for more than 80–85% in the realization, in the execution of the African progress, we are all deceiving ourselves. At the end of the day, they've always been having all these white elephant progress there. They've been talking about the youth, the progress of our youth. But why has it been difficult, all right, to ensure that the youth really are given what is required in terms of empowerment? I think that at the end of the day, there is nothing bad if the African leaders are now waking up again, if they are now attaching seriousness of purpose to the issue. We may commend them at least for always bringing the issue for discussion. But we need to tell them at the end of the day that who is now an African youth, really? How do you define the African youth? I think we should begin to address these issues from this perspective.
All right, Professor Bola Akinterewa, thank you very much there. Blessing.
Oh, yes, sir. Well, back to us in the Abuja studio. Let's explore the same issues alongside with our guest here. Ambassador Joe Keshi, issue of security, issue of the youth. So many are the front burner for African Union summits. Where do you pinch your tent?
Well, as my colleagues have said, to use a popular language, the discussions at the AU today are timely. But for me, this is not the first time the issue is being discussed. I served in Ethiopia in the 80s, and I do know that the issue of youth development was also on the agenda of a number of discussions, both at the AU and at the Economic Commission for Africa. But the reality is that today, the population in Africa is growing. That of Nigeria is even growing faster than most. But guess what? Nobody is actually producing jobs. That is the honest truth. And I say to my friends and to everywhere I speak on this issue these days that I'm actually no longer concerned about unemployment per se. I'm more concerned about the growing number of young people that may never work or may never have a decent employment, particularly in this country. And that segment is our nightmare. So the sooner we find a way to harness the energy to create jobs, and I think we need to realize that the traditional jobs are disappearing. The traditional jobs are disappearing. I was in a factory in New Jersey 2-3 weeks ago, and I saw the future cars. They have no engine, they don't need petrol. So when you just say, in fact, when you look at that car, you just know that in the next 10-15 years, the auto industry is gone as we know it today. So that's going to put large segment of people out of job. The fastest growing sector is in the ICT. So what does that tell us? It tells us two things, I mean, in terms of the population as well. One, we need to begin to invest in education with emphasis on science and technology. Two, we need to also control our population, particularly in this country. I don't know who gets a medal for having 100 children or more. So if we do not control our population and if we do not get serious in this country, look, I can give examples of so many agricultural policies that have been enunciated in this country. But are they working? Of course they are not. But agriculture can take a large segment of youth out of the employment market if it's well managed. And that is where we need to focus, at least for one reason. Whether we like it or not, we need to feed ourselves continuously every day. So when you take a look at what agriculture can do, when you take a look at the number of second industries that can grow out of agriculture, processing and the rest of them, package, it's a whole, gambit. So the sooner we just realize that we are living on a time bomb, and I think so many people have said this, we need to be more imaginative. We need to be more creative and innovative in talking about job creation.
All right, I'm just wondering, Ambassador Keshe, the point you just made, of course, along with the other guests, the issue that I would like Ambassador M.K. Ibrahim to respond to. You were in Libya. Now, one of the commonest features that we have seen of African youth is the migration crisis. And Libya is one of the outposts where, of course, they seek to migrate to Europe, to become factory or farm hands. Now, Professor Akintarewa makes the point that, look, the AU or sometimes African leaders are good more at talking rather than acting. Do you foresee any likely sea change in the fortunes of young persons arising from the conclusions or discussions at the ongoing summit? In other words, is there a proper apprehension of the key issues confronting the African youth today, especially also as articulated by Ambassador Keshe?
Well, thank you very much. In most of these discussions at the AU and other fora, it takes a very long time before you start seeing the effect. If you start talking about issue of youth unemployment now, you have to be looking probably in the next 10 years before you start seeing serious effect. The planning should have started long time ago. And you don't talk about youth unemployment independent of the educational system in the country and other issues that will engage the youth, to be self-reliant in what they are doing. Nigeria, South Africa, and Egypt, the big African countries, you see there's this common problem of youth restiveness, because the future looks almost hopeless, to them. We have university graduates in engineering who cannot even change the engine oil of their cars because this is the educational system. We don't teach people how to take care of themselves. We teach them just how to cram books, and when they come out, they are useless even to themselves, let alone the society. Even when we talk about agriculture, it's not easy. You have changed their orientation. They have spent 15 years in school, and the orientation is that they will leave the university, come and get a job. The orientation is not they will leave the university and go to the farm. And to switch them overnight is not, easy. And look at agriculture in this country. Only those who are in the rural areas who have absolutely no other option that go into agriculture. We have been talking that agriculture means business, but what have we done to make agriculture, appear, to be a business, that will make you to earn a decent living? You have mentioned about immigration. I think you are talking about irregular immigration. This has been going on for the past 30 years. It's not something new. What has the government done? I have mentioned last week that the only effort I knew the government made was 30 years ago, Andrew checking out. This is just a 1-minute jingle. But it made some sense at that time. Since then, what has happened? You know, it is difficult now with free movement within the ECOWAS. We say you should not go to Niger, and once you go to Niger, you know, you cannot move, you know, to the desert. They knew the risk. They know the risk, and they are still taking it. Because in a situation of total hopelessness with this youth, there's very little difference between life and death. They are willing to take all the risks, you know, to go to where they think the greener pasture is. There's nothing like green pasture anywhere again, but they don't believe it. So it is good that African countries are talking about it. Let's come back, you know, to the various, you know, sub-regions and start coming out with a real program to implement what we are talking about. And in West Africa, Nigeria should give the lead. We have the highest number of youth who are crossing the desert with all its implications, the crime rate in the country, the situation in the northeast and the Niger Delta. These are all clear issues of youth unemployment. In the northeast, this is the only I have visited and worked in so many countries in the world. I don't know anywhere, even in Afghanistan, where you can travel for 300 kilometers. You don't see one factory that is engaging 500 people. Nowhere in the world.
Yeah, but there are all kinds of political billboards advertising the political henchmen in those areas, different parts of the country.
In fact, what we had there, they are no longer there. Like in the northeast, we had the savannah, we had the highland tea, we had this. They are all there 20 years ago. Where are they today? Nothing.
Okay. Blessing, Blessing, I was just wondering, before you comment, when Ambassador MK was talking about the jingle that was popularized in the television jingle that was popularized by Andrew checking out, that's about 30 years or more ago. Andrew was actually checking out at the airport. Now we don't have people checking out at the airport.
They go to the desert.
They go to the desert and they get drowned.
All right, Ambassador, let's take a look at all the areas. I think the part of the areas looked into issue of food security as well as agriculture. Now you're taking a look at mass starvation, conflicts, droughts, actually fostering whatever it is that we've been planning. Now we're talking about a section of the population of youth. How do we begin to address some of these areas? These are prominent issues that is pushing most of the young persons even out there. But now Africa needs to feed itself. Ambassador Joe Keshi, where exactly do we begin to pinpoint those areas of conflicts and drought affecting what we could do with the continent?
I wish I wish I really know, you know, because when you talk of drugs, it's something that has been with us for years, and there's been so many policies put in place to address drug trafficking in this country. I think there was a time even we did execute people for that, if I remember clearly, and other, you know, other criminal activities. But when you look at what has happened, it has actually grown in magnitude. So it creates a new problem in itself, and this is why I said that the leaders really need to abandon the way they think and begin to be more creative, more innovative, because again, quite a number of things are happening around the world. Guns, for example, look, you can buy guns anywhere in the world or even in this country if you really want to. There are so many places, I understand you can get them. But look, the most important thing for me is, number one, let's give the youth very good education and direction to start with. Number two, let's invest seriously in agriculture. Because I make this point all the time that, look, if I'm going on the street and somebody says to me, take 2,000 naira and join and go and burn a house. If I was going to work and I know how much I earn, I'll just think the guy is an idiot. But if I have no means of eating that day, and this is 2,000 naira just to go and light a place, I would do it. It's as simple as that. And this is why it is important that, for now at least, what I believe we can do is that if we expand our agricultural growth, it will really take in a large segment. And as my colleague here rightly pointed out, we need to begin to make the youth understand that the banks no longer have the capacity to provide jobs. The oil companies are in crisis and they can't take large more. The telecom companies are already, getting saturated. So either they begin to provide jobs for themselves or they actually go into agriculture. But we must also find a way of making agriculture very attractive. But for me, the most important thing is that governments say these things, but they are not serious. Look, not too long ago in this country, I believe, under this administration, I think they came out with a policy on agriculture to say that states should decide what they have comparative advantage and begin to produce. Find out if anybody is doing that. Nobody is doing that. I can give you a figure from the South, where between 2011 to 2015, they budgeted about 95.74 for agriculture. They spent less than 6%. So you can imagine if they've invested the whole money in agriculture, where they will be today. So we should stop paying lip service to some of these things and realize that these are real dangers that we are playing with. And be serious. And let's leave propaganda aside. I make the point, nobody is creating jobs, particularly in this country today. And we need to find a way of creating. Look, go around the street, go around the villages. You see what is happening. So when we are complaining of youth restiveness, insecurity, the rest of them that youths are involved in today, and that some of them spend the whole time they have today on social media, is because they have nothing to do. You are here, you're walking, and I don't see any of you with your phone, but all the youths in this country today, they get up, the first thing they do is they pick up their phones, and they start playing with their phones until nightfall.
All right. Ambassador Keshi.
Let's return to Lagos.
Just get our guests back. Lagos Network Studios, both Ambassador Akinsoya and Professor Bola Akinteriwa. Well, gentlemen, one other issue that our correspondent indicated that is engaging the attention of the summit here in Addis, of course, has to do with the restructuring of the AU. This has been on the cards for quite a while. Funding is a major challenge. We understand. Of course, there's the lingering embarrassment of the continent relying, as it were, on aids and grants from elsewhere, versus what we find in terms of capital outflows from the African continent. How much can be achieved with regard to reforming the AU for greater effectiveness? Let's begin again with Ambassador Akinsoya.
On the cards for a while. Our Professor Adebayo Adedeji did a comprehensive study of the reforms, including structural reforms, broadening the funding mechanisms, and it all boils down to what has been discussed by our colleagues, the implementation. There was also the Rwandan President's panel that went into the issue of having these reforms. So I think there have been quite a lot of thoughts about the need to restructure the African Union to make it more, to render it more effective. The issue of funding is also very apt in terms of over-dependency on funds, even for peace support operations. There have been quite a lot of efforts. President Obasanjo looked at the issue of institutional reforms also, and broadening the base of financing. There are quite a lot of proposals on the table, but it also boils down to implementation. I think, and this is where ECOWAS comes in as a model for funding. The decision what Markham reported about the tariff on 2%, it's something that is being done within the ECOWAS, for the sort of auto-dependence on funding. So it is a good thing now that AU is now coming to grips with the issue of funding, because the larger contributors, of which Nigeria is one, that internal problems, there are quite a lot of others that are not able to pay their subscription. So I think broadening the base and finding new innovative approaches to funding is a way to go. Now, let me just touch on the issue of implementation that have been done. There was a time in the EU that we talked about, perhaps let's put a moratorium on decisions and implement the actions, the programs that have been done. The July summit, I mean, it will be interesting to know why the July summit is being held in Addis Ababa, maybe because there was nobody to host. The implementation of decisions is what the July summit is meant to be. To have a checklist of decisions and see where countries are in terms of implementation. Coming into force, domesticating the decision itself to be able to move forward. I take the point about what should be done at the national level. But of course, I also always see this merit about having this in school, because it is a topical issue that must also be brought to the attention of African leaders. To move forward on some of these things. A lot of things will be done at the national level, but also you have to encourage the youths. The private sector have to come in terms of helping to create jobs, encouraging the skills acquisition, and also enable the youth to be employed. Evidently, is doing a 5-year leadership foundation. That is a sector-led initiative. And I think the private sector also has to do a lot in complementing what the government is doing. Because we need to engage our youth. We need to ensure that the issue of funding around doing what is supposed to be done within the EU has to be done. So this decision about having 2%, just like we have talked about using some revenue from tourism to fund African Union, these are all the ideas that are on the table, and I think we should now begin to look at how to fund the African Union with this new initiative, at least to take a cue from what the ECOWAS has been doing.
Thank you very much, Ambassador Akinsoya. Well, still with you in Lagos, but this time around to Professor Akinteriwa. Yes, we wish to respond alongside where Ambassador Akinsoya stopped. But taking alongside this question, to what extent has Nigeria asserted itself or herself on issues of interest at this meeting, even as the summit winds up today?
A kind question, but I will answer by raising questions. First of all, when Olusegun Obasanjo was chair of the EU, 2004-5, 2006, now the idea of how to raise funds, how to go about restructuring, could be traced to that time. Obasanjo heads a committee of AU. He underscored the importance of hospitality industry. His committee recommended that for anyone traveling to or out of Africa, they should pay a certain percentage. They talked about this 2%. It has been on for long. Now, 2006 to 2017, we have about a decade in between. My question is this: if it will take 10 years to take a decision on a recommendation, if on a yearly basis you have a question recurring, begging for answer, then how far can we go? Question 1. Question 2. Nigeria's interest. To what extent have we been able to affirm our position? I like the question because there are many conflicting principles on which the big five of Africa are required under normal circumstances to respect. If you look at the election of the Angolan, I've forgotten the name of the former chair of the AU Commission, now who competed with the South African foreign minister. Yes, John Ping. Now, Nigeria supported him on the basis of the principle that South Africa, Nigeria, and the three big others will not contest for an election because they are big, they are supposed to be kingmakers. And in this case, Nigeria, in due respect, in compliance with the principle, now supported Ping. Now, South Africa refused to go along that principle. Now, the question you asked, to what extent have we been able to protect our interest? I think we have been protecting our interest by giving priority to the interests of others. And that is why, if you look at our own constitution, the 1999 constitution as amended, it is stated there that Nigeria's foreign policy objective is to respect international law, international treaty. Now, how can we make the respect of international law a foreign policy objective, for God's sake? Now, if the interest of Nigeria is simply to comply, to be respecting, and others are not, then the answer cannot be far-fetched. So, the current meeting, as we are going about that now, there are two ways of looking at the question. Yes, our interest is protected because now the routine election, we are chair of the African Peace and Security Committee for the month. Okay, if that is what we are counting as interest, but I think there's no big deal about that one. So I am arguing here that to a great extent, our foreign policy has not been protecting the national interest. Why? It means simply because the concept of national interest, as agreed to in Nigeria, is at best ambiguous. So we don't have any strategic focus we are pursuing there. And that is why, at the end of the day, the attitudinal disposition has been reactive.
All right, that's Ambassador Kintari. Well, of course, we'll come back to our two guests in the Lagos studios, just to indicate that there are reactions that we are taking from our viewers in the meantime by way of consider Twitter handle on the screen there at NTA GMN. But I must see H. Adamu tweets. Now, there's a big difference between what the states agreed to do at the summit and what they actually do or implement as their national priorities.
From Mike Ayanko is the tweet: AU should, as a matter of utmost priority, pursue wealth creation, peace, youth empowerment, and elimination of illegal migration in Africa.
And then we have this tweet from Duke Agono. It says, Ambassador Keshe is on point. Unfortunately, instead of ICT, our leaders battle to introduce or remove religious issues in Nigeria. God have mercy, according to him. Now, those are some of the tweets that we're taking in the meantime. Just to return to our correspondent, Simon Makut Macham, who's, of course, been on standby. He joined us, of course, at the beginning of this conversation. He's back again on the screen, joining us via Skype. Makut, obviously, some of the reports we heard earlier, including the ones that you filed, indicated that members of the Economic Community of West African States have been also holding meetings on the sidelines, alongside, of course, the ongoing summit. What are the takeaways from the interactions of ECOWAS members? Because that's another issue that we're dealing with right now. That's to say, Nigeria and ECOWAS on the heels of what some have described as the worrisome attempt by Morocco to become a member of ECOWAS.
Kingsley, the ECOWAS Council of Ministers met the day before yesterday and yesterday. Basically, the agenda of that meeting was to continue discussions on the reform of the ECOWAS Commission. Remember that the heads of states have agreed that the positions for commissioners should reduce from 15 to 9. And indeed, Nigeria was at the forefront of pushing that position, which the heads of state adopted. Now, the thorny issue at this meeting was how to now share the positions vis-a-vis the tenure. Now that the tenure will be reduced to 2 years, what happens to the current leadership, which was for 4 years? Now, it was a very heated discussion where they indeed failed to reach an agreement, because some countries objected to the fact that if you're going to rotate the presidency of the commission from henceforth in alphabetical order, like one of the proposals was made, then those who have headed the organization will not be eligible. And then it will continue to go that way until those who are supposed to get it. Now, others are saying if you follow alphabetical order, then it may take 50 years before some countries head the ECOWAS. So it was very heated, and they failed to reach a consensus. And at the end, we understand, as the Foreign Affairs Minister of Nigeria briefed us, that they are going to revert to the heads of state to take a final decision on what could be done. But it was very clear that the need to reposition the ECOWAS Commission was very key, because it also needs to be effective. It also needs to respond to current dynamics, and particularly about the funding. Nigeria carries the burden of that organization, so to say, in funding, and so by the time this reform is actualized, it will be able to perhaps get some relief from the burden of that heavy financial obligation. But some other things that I think they also discussed were the allocations of some positions within the commission, the ECOWAS Commission. And we understand that Nigeria got the nod for the position it was looking for, which will be finalized and then made public. But the meeting is basically to continue to carry out the mandate of the task that was given to them at the last meeting in Liberia.
All right, thank you very much, Makut Simon Macham. You joined us via Skype from Addis Ababa. Well, let's get to see more as you send in your reports before the close of the meeting. Thank you very much. This is Good Morning Nigeria. We'll take a break now. When we return, we'll now take a look at some of those issues raised by Makut from his observation at the AU summit, but of course for ECOWAS meeting on the sidelines. But that will be when we return from this break.
Oh boy, climb this thing now. Not be only to connect lights. Come you and yourself now. Now wow. Oh boy, come down now. Oga Kasali, electrician, who will they look for with this? Oh, Oga Kasali, come help us fix this wire now.
Sorry. I no longer carry out illegal connection. It puts the lives of people at risk and can cause fire outbreak and disrupt power supply. I will never be part of anything that has to do with this any longer because change begins with me.
Oh boy, let's in talk make sense. Oh boy, we could carry this ladder for both.
This message is brought to you by the National Orientation Agency in conjunction with the Federal Ministry of Information and Culture.
Admission forms for the 2017-2018 academic session of NTA Television College JAWS into its diploma programs are now on sale. The diploma programs are in film and TV production, broadcast journalism, and TV engineering technology. Applicants are required to have at least 5 credits, including English language and mathematics at SSC, NECO, or GCO levels in not more than 1 sitting. Application forms can be obtained from the TV College Refi JAWS or at any NTA zonal centers nationwide on payment of a no-refundable fee of 7,500 Naira in bank draft in favor of NTA Television College. Completed application forms should be returned to the Office of the Academic Secretary, NTA Television College, or the Center of Purchase on or before 28th of July 2017. For further inquiries, please call 0806 980 9807 or 0703 660 7155. NTA Television College, training you to be the best you can be.
Slow, madam. I recover. Good, carry on. Set up. Akbar, now waiting be this. Hey, there is smart gun over here. Don't fit everybody want make I put them on top. You remember I just smart connect when I charge 100 Naira, then go give me 800 Naira. You know my bureau. Now every end of the month, then go give me back all my recharge. Why don't recharge? As that bonus from this one, no, we just jara. That now over jara back to sender. Over jara back to sender. Mama, this is.
Buy an Airtel SIM and get back all your recharges as data bonus by month end on Smart Connect.
Hey! Alele.
Airtel, the smartphone network.
All right, you're welcome back. And it's still Good Morning Nigeria, reaching you live on the network service of the Nigerian Television Authority. A moment ago, my colleague Blessing signed off, another colleague of ours, Makul Simon Macham, who joined us via Skype from Addis, where he's covering the ongoing 29th summit of the AU. And one of the last issues that Makul was talking about, Blessing, of course, had to do with the ECOWAS Council of Ministers meeting on the sidelines of the AU summit. And that's what we also indicated to our guests who are still with us, both in the Lagos and Abuja studios. Again, let's return to our guest here, Ambassador M.K. Ibrahim. You listen to our correspondent, the issue with regard to reforming ECOWAS and the conditions or the demands being made by some of the members. Nigeria, of course, has been said, as Professor Akitadamwa indicated, you know, it bears a great deal of the financial burden in ECOWAS. But what is it that Nigeria what is Nigeria and ECOWAS? What are Nigeria's interests, and how well are these interests articulated and pursued under the current arrangement, even under the proposed restructuring of the ECOWAS itself? Ambassador MK.
Thank you very much. It is a pity we really have failed to reassert ourselves in ECOWAS. ECOWAS, if you read the beginning from 1975, is almost like a project of Nigeria. And since that time, Nigeria has been bearing the biggest burden of sustaining, ECOWAS. Between 65% and 70% of the budget of ECOWAS comes, from Nigeria. And all these discussions that have been going on now, about offices, how do we share offices, for goodness sake, ECOWAS is 42 years old. These are not issues that should be confronting us by now. And it's only Nigeria, given the example, of the Bretton Woods institutions. Since the creation of the World Bank, Americans have always headed that organization because they pay the largest contribution. He who pays the piper dictates the tune. And this is just a simple reality in foreign policies, in life generally. But Nigeria has been unable to assert itself. So many things are happening in ECOWAS. Decisions are taken sometimes without even the active contribution, of Nigeria. Part of this blame should go to us, because we have been unable to get the right people, in the commission to act on our behalf. See, example, the last summit, the 51st session of ECOWAS that took place in Moravia. There is no reason on earth why Nigeria should virtually, abscond from that meeting. No reason. Because it's just like your own project, and you turn your back, at it. Critical decisions have been taken at that summit. And now we're struggling to see how we can reverse or change, these decisions because of our absence. It's not a sign of leadership. And I hope the decision makers in Nigeria are listening, to that.
All right, Ambassador Brian, thank you very much. Ambassador Joe Keshi, would you say Nigeria's Big Brother role, its own disadvantage in this case? We have a saying, local saying here, that the eldest person is always like the garbage, where you could keep dumping so many refuse and all of that. Is our Big Brother role actually affecting us in any way or the other? Or how do we reconcile all this restructuring not in our favor?
No, I'm not sure our Big Brother role is affecting us. I think what has happened, if I understand your proverb very well, is you talked of the elder in the village taking all the
insult to rubbish, everything. Not
but when you also look at that elder, he also approaches all the issues with a sense of wisdom and guidance to the younger ones. I think what we have failed to do over time is just to do that, because there was a time, in the life of this country that we asserted ourselves at the ECOWAS meetings. At least I can remember 75, 76, 77. These were the formative years of the organization. And I still, as you speak, I still remember the then Minister of Planning standing up at an ECOWAS fund meeting and insisting that unless Nigeria's position was honored, accepted, we were not going to move forward. And at the end of the day, that was what was done. Most people don't remember that when, for example, it started for ECOWAS fund, for example, we were supposed to have a position that was almost taken as permanent. Over time, we lost that position. So as a result of so many factors, carelessness, lack of proper preparation, lack of institutional memories by those involved, we lost so many things. Look, when you look at some of the current issues, and as he rightly pointed out, you begin to wonder that, let me just take this Morocco and Morocco's application to join as an example. Togo is supporting the move. And the guy in Togo today, his father was a founding member, led with General Gawan, really pushed for the formation. You would think that somebody like that would take it upon himself to consult Nigeria to say, no, organization founded my father is being threatened by this application. What do we do? Nigeria itself, I do not know. Look, when I returned to the foreign minister as permanent secretary a few years ago, in a conversation with the then minister, I found that 2 years after becoming the minister, he has not even done a tour of the West African countries, and he knew very little of his colleague's name. That was not what we used to do in those days. So in holding together the region, today you cannot go to South Africa and find Southern Africa and find this kind of thing happening, because South Africa is in proper control of the states of that region. But we seem to have withdrawn. I really do not know why. And the fact that Morocco is even penetrating, and what are they using? Soft power. Just means that we have stopped doing what we used to do in the good old days. And we need to go back to that. We need to find a way of bringing these neighbors and friends in ECOWAS to ourselves to understand our position. When issues like this happen, we send our diplomats out into the field to begin to lobby, to begin to say, this is our position, this is what we are going to do. Not when you go to an ECOWAS meeting in a large gathering, you don't make any progress at that point. So it's a question of the fact that we have retreated, and we need to begin to say that that retreat is not paying well for us, and we need to find a way of getting back to the forefront.
All right, Ambassador Keshi, thank you very much. Let's go back to Lagos. Professor Bola Akintari, while you listen to the two guests here with us in the studios, now what's your take on Nigeria and ECOWAS? Is our diplomacy failing, and how can it be rejuvenated in light of ongoing efforts to reform ECOWAS itself?
Argument one, our concept of big brother is manifestation. I think it has been generally disadvantageous. Why? Because the other member states of the ECOWAS, particularly the Francophones, and as defined in 1970 by Amani Dieri of Niger, we do not have the same meaning of cooperation. For the Francophones, the way they look at the meaning of cooperation is that you are a big brother. God bless you more than God has blessed us. So, it is for you to give us because we have more than we do. But because God endowed you more, you should give us without complaining. So they do not look at it from the perspective of having to reciprocate. Reciprocity is one of the pillars of international relations. That's the first point there. We do not have the same conception, the same meaning to cooperation. Ambassador Joe Keshi rightly pointed out, he reminded us that Nigeria and Togo were founding fathers. They started together. Now, how do you explain the fact that Togo now will now be supporting the membership of Morocco to begin with? Contrary to Article 1 and Article 1D and Article 1E of the treaty establishing the African Economic Community, that West Africa is a region in Africa, which is different from the definition of the United Nations. United Nations looks at the whole of the continent, the whole of Africa as a region. But Article 1B says, no, Africa is divided into 5 for purposes of African integration. So, North Africa is a region, and that's where Morocco belongs to. But the issue now is that Morocco now wanting to come to the ECOWAS region. The argument of soft power, as raised by Ambassador Keshi, is valid. But I want to take a different look at it. That, look, what is happening right now is that if you want to factor in why the Gambia and Nigeria in particular have not signed the EPA, the Economic Partnership Agreements, we have not signed that. And the European Union has refused, even though majority of the West African countries, all others except Nigeria and the Gambia, have signed. They have appended to their signature. But now they discover that without Nigeria, what is EPA in the context of West Africa? Now they are trying to look at how to still target Nigeria, how to ensure that Morocco will be an instrument, a transit, an instrument, for the promotion, for the exploitation of their goods to the West African region. So, in this case, Morocco is not simply coming to be a member because of any bilateral ties. I think that there's an extra-African, there's a European dimension, there's an American dimension to the use, all right, of Morocco to get certain things done. If you want to go back to Shaba 1, Shaba 2, when, for instance, Idi Amin and a host of others, when they hijacked these Israeli aircraft, Morocco was the country used. All right. So Morocco is Arab in the morning, is Africa in the afternoon. In the evening, Morocco is neither of the two. It all depends on which interest is at stake. And I am saying that these are the factors we need to look at. On the one hand, if we are saying African integration, it will be good to accommodate Morocco to come and join. There wouldn't be any problem. But regional integration as defined in the 1981 treaty establishing the African Economic Community locates Morocco in the northern region, you know, of Africa. So if we are talking about integration, it is not Africa as a group, as a collective, you know, body that will come and negotiate with the ECOWAS. But the way we are going about it now, I think that there is a fundamental error, a strategic fundamental error. If we do not, if we are not careful in terms of its handling, it is not just Nigeria that will lose out totally. That may even bring the end to the ECOWAS as a regional organization itself.
All right, Professor Akintoye, thank you very much there for your comments. Let's also get the views of Ambassador Akintoye, who is seated beside you there. Ambassador Akintoye, is our diplomacy floundering in ECOWAS? What do we need to do?
I think so. I think it has been a policy reversal. It's a policy somersault, and we need to redeem ourselves. We need to reassert ourselves in the ECOWAS. Our founding fathers invested a lot of effort. They invested their energy, their funding, to have a sub-regional community that would bridge the divide between the French and the English. Hitherto, there have been counseled de l'entente by the French. Yeah. There is also that being the CIO, and what both President Gowon at that time and Yassine Eyadema did was to sort of bridge this gap. And we had at that time some opposition from the CFAs of this world, the multilaterals, the SCA, that were trying to curb the effort of Nigeria. But we went that through, and Nigeria became a project, as Ambassador M.K. Ibrahim has done. But what have we seen in the last few years? I think we need to continuously strategize, put on the table our strategic interest. What is Nigeria's strategic interest in the ECOWAS now? And I think that is very basic to what is happening. Morocco has no business coming into the ECOWAS. The market that they belong is in turmoil. And they would not be able to strengthen this organization to pursue continental integration and African unity. Why is ECOWAS, why is Morocco coming into ECOWAS? I think, for me, it boils down on a proverb that if there's no crack in the wall, lizards will not come in. I think we are opening our doors because of our complacency or ineffectiveness to do what we are supposed to do. Yes, we need some posts, we need that, but what is important is the effectiveness. Anything that will whittle down the influence of Nigeria should be resisted. And I believe that others, many foreign policy experts have spoken, the ACAN has spoken, and many have written copiously about this issue. I think the fact that Nigeria was represented as the lowest level, which has never happened, gave way to all this. We are playing a role now in Abuja, in the wings of the summit to just dust the surface. But that is not what is essential. At the moment, there must be strategic efforts to say that the next Nobel Convention, Nigeria comes strong to say that Morocco has no place in the ECOWAS. Also, there are other elements of the ECOWAS that is falling. Is Morocco going to have the rights of residence and the rights of establishment that the 1979 Protocol on Free Movements of Persons provides? Or can Morocco claim to have good governance that the 2001 Protocol on Democracy, Good Governance and Human Rights provides as a monarchical hereditary organization? The Africa West, the ECOWAS as a Rex, with the leadership and the push of Nigeria, has done a lot to be the avant-garde for the regional economic communities, 5 of them. But of course, there are others like the IGAD, the CENSAD, the Links Commission and all that, which EU has sort of rationalized. Consanguinity, proximity, geographical links are the basis of ECOWAS coming together. I think Nigeria will continue to have a very important role to play. Nigeria will continue to have a very important role to play in spite of the situation of our economic issues. We are going to go to the Security Council. We need the support on many things. And I think it's important that we strike a dynamic balance between the big brotherism and what is expected of us and our economic situations. That national interest, which is a totality of particularistic interest and others, must come into play here. The national interest, whatever the huge market that we exploited the huge market in ECOWAS. I was part of ECOWAS economic diplomacy, and I know what we did in terms of finding markets for Nigerian goods. Have we exhausted that? The private sector were encouraged in partnership to be able to go into the West African countries, sell our goods in Sandaga market in Senegal, sell our goods in Makala market in Ghana, and the goods are there. We need to formalize it. I think it's important that Nigeria reasserts its power, its importance within ECOWAS. I should not allow the incursions of the Francophones. We must take note that they are all Francophones. Morocco, Tunisia that wants to come as an observer, and even Mauritania that is inside and inside out is also Mauritania. The Africa is now in the hands of the Francophones. The chairman of the union is Guinea, a Francophone. The chair of the African Union Commission is Chadian. And we must along these lines to say that we must counteract whatever incursion, whatever efforts are being, because they are more than us. We will not go to the Maghreb. We will not even go to the Economic Community of Africans there on SADC. But we must maintain that stronghold in our natural backyard. That is my take.
Akinsoya, Ambassador MK Ibrahim, this incursion is going to cost us so much.
Thank you very much. I think this is a very, very important issue that policymakers in Nigeria should be aware of. In foreign policy, you need to take into account the mood of the nation. In this issue, Nigerians are not even aware. Government seems to be doing certain things surreptitiously. We are not aware of what is happening. Nigerians should be involved in this debate. Whatever we say about ECOWAS, ECOWAS is the most successful regional economic community in Africa. And it should be curious. We should be curious that if all of a sudden we see Morocco wants to join, we see Tunisia wants to come as an observer, and we see Mauritania that have left in 2000, wants to come back. What is happening?
What is cooking?
We should really, ask ourselves. We shouldn't be rushed. We should not allow anybody to pull the wool over our eyes. And it seems that is what Nigeria is doing. Okay. We mentioned about the Arab Maghreb Union. Put the argument in the reverse form. Would Nigeria go to the Arab Maghreb Union? Imagine their own They call it Arab Maghreb Union. It's not West Africa, it's not South Africa, it's Arab. So if you attempt to say to go to that place, come on, you are not an Arab. So why are they coming to our own? Is it because we call ourselves ECOWAS? We have not given the racial connotation?
All right, Ambassador M.K. Ibrahim, we're pressed for time as always. We've had very lively conversation from the reactions that we have received. Ambassador M.K. Ibrahim, former Nigerian ambassador to Libya, would like to appreciate you being part of our discussion this morning. I also would like to thank Ambassador Joe Keshi, former Permanent Secretary in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. It's always a delight having you on Good Morning Nigeria, Ambassador Keshi.
Thank you.
Okay. And then from our Lagos Network studios, our appreciation also goes to Ambassador Akinsoya. Ambassador Akinsoya was former Nigeria Summer Envoy to the AU in Addis. Then our appreciation also to Professor Bola Akinterewa, former DG, Institute of International Affairs. Gentlemen, that does it for our discussion segment on Good Morning Nigeria today. Let's go over now quickly to sports. That Wimbledon, that's the third Grand Slam of the year, began yesterday. There was one huge fall on the men's draw. That's Stan Wawrinka fell on the first hurdle of Venus Williams, Nadal, and of course Andy Murray all safely through to the second round. Let's go.